All right. I want to offer an extremely direct argument for voting third party. Maybe you're the sort of person who's been on the streets chanting Genocide Joe, Genocide Joe. All right. Um, and maybe you're the sort of person who's going to vote for Joe Biden anyway, even though you think that he's complicit in a genocide. So let me just say this. If you are under an absolute moral obligation not to vote for someone who you think is complicit in a genocide, if it can possibly be avoided, and it definitely can. Okay. So, Ms. Progressive, I'm just confronting you with the fact that you can vote for Cornel West, you can vote for Jill Stein, you cannot vote. But if you vote for Biden and you think he's complicit in a genocide, then you think you're complicit in a genocide. If you don't think you're morally obligated not to vote for genocide, I want to see that argument, okay? Otherwise, I want you voting for Cornel West, baby. Maybe you're pissed at Cornel West because he might make Donald Trump president or whatever. Well, not as pissed as you should be at yourself when you vote for a genocide, B. All right, I'm going to read this column which bounced back from a couple of papers. I think for reasons that these papers actually do not want to promote third-party candidates, believe it or not. They think they're under some kind of absolute obligation to help Joe Biden become president because Trump is such a monster. When genocide is the lesser of two evils, we've witnessed the reduction of the two-party system to moral absurdity. On the streets of D.C., and indeed at every campaign event of late, President Biden has been confronted by protesters chanting Genocide Joe, Genocide Joe, repudiating the administration's support for Israel's destruction of Gaza, where the death toll is climbing to around 30,000. Indeed, a friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, resorts to the phrase regularly, both at protests and in conversation. The other day at a get-together, I asked her who she's going to vote for. Biden, she said. At least he's better than the alternative. She's not alone, I believe. Even though the rest of the people in the room seem to regard this as a perfectly understandable response, I found it rather shocking, though I stayed pretty quiet. My friend, as you might imagine, is not the sort of person who supports genocide in any form with regard to anybody, but she intends to vote for a candidate whom she regards as a genocidaire. Now, we are looking at the dawn, a beautiful dawn out my window here in Rappahannock County, Virginia. And maybe the truth is dawning. You're going to vote for Cornel West, dude, all right? Beats voting for someone you think is a genocidaire, doesn't it? Right? Um, Voting on your own account in favor of crimes against humanity is about the worst moral outcome imaginable in a context of electoral politics. It's hard to imagine a more devastating compromise of more fundamental values. I try to remind her that she's not required to vote at all, and that other people, including several anti-war candidates, are running. However, not voting at all is regarded by my friend and many others as a failure of civic duty. Though voting for a person you believe is right now engaged in a genocide is obviously a much worse failure of civic duty. We could do a trolley problem on this. But at any rate, sitting this one out doesn't appear to many to be an option. And like not voting, voting for West or Stein, if you were considering voting for Biden, helps Trump, whom my friend, a queer woman, and many others regard as racist, sexist, and a threat to democracy. That's completely unacceptable. Yeah, I agree, actually. So she takes herself to be trapped. It's a hell of a trap, we might say, using hell literally. For example, if there is a God, I speculate that he might judge people who consciously choose to vote for genocide rather negatively. That's my lovely kitten, really, Orion. I sound angry and then I sound happy. It's pretty weird. Meanwhile, Gaza looks more and more like hell on earth, but there's apparently no electoral way for an American to express their opposition or institute a change in policy. No electoral way to express your opposition to the war in Gaza. So she takes herself to be trapped. As people weigh the question of whether to vote for the person they regard as a genocidaire or for the person they regard as a racist sexual assaulter, they have reduced the two-party system to a moral absurdity. On their own account, if they vote, they cannot vote but vote in favor of things they regard as monstrous crimes and people they regard as monstrous criminals. And that, in turn, reflects or remakes who they are. If you vote for one of these people, that reflects on who you are. On the one hand, a person who votes in favor of genocide, or on the other, a person who votes in favor of racism and sexual assault. Either way, you're not a good person. The two-party system, admittedly, is the only possible excuse, but that's what's corrupted you. Biden's campaign is evidently worried about the possibility of Arab Americans, strong progressives, and supporters of Palestine not voting or voting third party. They're worried about people becoming so disillusioned, and not only by Gaza, but by border policies. He's going to shut down the border now, okay? Build the wall, Joe. Then turnout dips and they lose if you don't vote. But there's unlikely to be a massive or even significant defection from Biden because the same people will, when push comes to shove, regard the alternative as worse. So we might as well just continue right on. Worse, however, than genocide? Well, possibly American politics and its two-party system has grown so polarized that people maintain their factional loyalty even at the expense of their moral identity and self-respect, even at the expense of massive death and destruction around the world. But if so, the two-party system has turned us all into very bad people. That, I think, would be plenty to indicate that it needs to be destroyed. We live, allegedly, in a representative democracy. It's fair to say, however, that no one can be adequately represented by someone who they themselves take to be engaged right now in profound evil. When you're cornered and feel your vote to be forced, when you vote for things that you strongly repudiate, you are not being represented. In this sense, the two-party system is flatly anti-democratic and is confronting millions of people right now with the question of who they are while providing no answers whatsoever. That's an intolerable moral situation for my friend. It's a kind of moral suffering, really, but it's an intolerable moral situation for the country as well. So now I'm doing columns on YouTube, I guess, instead of in newspapers. Will anybody see it? Who knows? And now the dawn has broken. Or actually, the sun's just about to come up over there. Peace, yo.